Awesome. Hello, everybody. We're here at the porch with Tiffany. This is going to be amazing. We just had a little talk beforehand, like literally the tiniest talk ever, and I'm already excited. I'm just going live on all of our different platforms, so give me a minute. 1 minuto, por favor. Lots of buttons to click on Facebook. Lots of buttons. Great. We should be live. Hey, Sam, can you check on your end if it's live on Facebook just to make sure we're good? Beautiful. All right. Look at all these people in here with us. My mom's here. Hey, Mama. We've got a ton of awesome people joining us for this call. If you're the type of person that's like, I want to send somebody the recording, you will definitely have the chance to. We'll have the recording available. You will want to. You know, we all listen to a lot of webinars and stuff right now, but when Tiffany does one, I actually go out of my way and put it on my calendar and I listen to it. And she's got such awesome information to share with us today. I first met Tiffany because she was speaking before me at an employee engagement event. She walked up on stage, she had her bomber jacket, she had her Element 3 t-shirt, and she just started off being real. And I was like, who is she? I must know her. I must learn from her. And it's very rare that I get kind of girl fanny, and I totally did with a girl fanny. Is that the right term? Fangirly, that's it. And it's very rare that I do that and that I even approach other speakers. And I was like, this human is going to make such a difference here, not just in the lives of our employees, but for everybody that's willing to listen to her. So Tiffany Sauder is on with us, hanging out at the porch today. You know, we're all coming back from Memorial Day. I've got a nice little sunburn on my shoulders. It's great. A little bit about her. She is the president and CEO of Element 3. If you have a company and you're trying to figure out how to create a personality around it that people can grab onto, Tiffany is the person to talk to. Her team is amazing at branding, and she's responsible for big picture things. As a CEO, you would know, vision. She's worried about the top line growth. She's building world-class teams. And she's got awesome strategies in which she does that. And so just the fact that we got her time today, right off a holiday, is huge. Tiffany, thank you for being here with me. I'm really excited to do this with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. It'll be really fun.
Yes, I'm going to say girl fanny a lot during this, just because I said it once. Now I've already broken the ice. So, okay, I'd love to start us off, though. We're all sitting on the porch. Maybe you've got your favorite drink. And I like to go deep quick. So I'm curious. And I am actually, like, knowing how you present yourself and just how cool you are, I'm curious, what is a childhood memory for you that shaped you? It could be good or bad, but what's something that you remember from your past that kind of shapes who you are today?
Yeah, I think there's like two there that have come together as I think you do start to realize where you grew up, how you grew up, birth order, all that. It's not hocus pocus. I think it's so real. Even when I have new direct reports, I so often want to learn, where are you at in birth order? Did you have brothers and sisters? What was it like?
Yes.
What did your parents do? What was their job? I think all that informs our worldview so much. So on one hand, I grew up in kind of the wild, wild west, and my dad was really entrepreneurial. He farmed when I was little, started his own business when I was in third grade, and I'm the oldest of four, so I was the oldest in third grade, and my youngest sibling was like 3 months old. He'd just been born.
Wow.
And so I look now and I think about having a household full of 4 kids and really taking this huge financial gamble. My dad had grown up in farming. He farmed with his brothers. His dad had farmed. It's really the only thing he knew. But he had an uncle and my dad asked a lot. He's very curious. He had asked a lot of questions. My uncle was in the pallet business. And so my dad then opened up a pallet business, really just because his uncle knew how to do it, not because he had a particular passion for it. And they're now, I don't know what, a long time, 35 years later, they're the largest pallet manufacturer east of the Mississippi. So I really grew up the kid of an entrepreneur. And I grew up around a lot of risk. Like, you don't know those words when you're young, and you don't understand that there's sort of that volatility in the home. But I grew up in that environment that I think really equipped me for, what can be emotional highs and lows if you allow it to be as a business owner, an entrepreneur, or taking on new projects, even inside of an existing company.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was so steady, even though there was massive volatility now as an adult. I know the story in a
Looking
different
back,
way.
yeah.
And so I think that that was a primary driver in just having, I would say, the stomach and the appetite for being an entrepreneur.
Totally.
The other side, which is more personal, is that I was a late bloomer, I would say, in life. I was kind of chubby until I went through puberty. And, today we'd use words like bullying. It wasn't quite that formalized in my country middle school with a class of 70. But I was called Tiffer Sniffer, the big butt whipper. So sad and funny now. But really, had some moments in 6th and 7th grade that were really hurtful. And I think that that's not so much so you come in and socially rescue me right now, but this sense of having compassion for a broader sense of humanity than might just be than maybe just my own demographic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that created a softness and awareness in my heart that has been an important part of the way I've grown as a leader. So
it's interesting to look back, isn't it? Especially because you have kids, so you're looking through their eyes now too. And some of ththose moments that are so difficult as a kid do become anchors for empathy for other people.
Yeah, I think as a parent, and I don't necessarily look back and say, like, I wish my parents would have rescued me from that. I think with good parenting or later in life with good counseling, you can really learn to use those moments in productive ways in your life, and to kind of grow forward through them. So I don't have any type of, like, I would say, resentment or anger about it. I think it's armed me with a broader sense of empathy and understanding than I would have had otherwise.
Yep, that makes sense. And I would think too, as a CEO and a leader of a company, there is this story that people can believe that the CEO is like removed from the suffering of employees, but you really do understand and live life with them. I mean, I hear you do that all the time amongst them and with them and on their behalf too. We've had conversations, you, me, and Karen, on their behalf. This is how we're going to take care of them. And so, I mean, I see that all the time in how you treat everyone that you encounter. So that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I wrote a post on LinkedIn that was like kind of, I think, externalizing to me as a little bit cathartic, even to discover my own thoughts. And it was about this. I feel the sense. I think you feel this as a mom, you feel this as a friend, sometimes as a spouse, but as a business leader right now, I feel the sense to want to throw a safety net around all my employees to say, look, here is the safe harbor. Don't worry. There's enough time, money, oxygen, and food. You're going to live, for as long as you need to. But yeah, balancing that with the sense of accomplishment, the sense of, I don't know, self-power, empowerment, the sense of understanding that, I have the ability to overcome hard things.
Yes.
And the only way you prove that to yourself is by doing it.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. And that's when you have more courage to almost chew through the battles that life brings to you faster and with more courage. And then I just feel like that speeds up the momentum of life. So it's just, I think it's such this hard juxtaposition of how much do you let people experience because it's part of their own, like trees get more strong, like their trunks get more strong when they've been in wind and rain kind of thing.
Yep.
Is that true?
Totally.
I think that's true.
It's true. I posted about it like a month ago. The root systems go deeper when they have wind.
Yes. And it's the exact same thing with us as people. And so I think as a leader right now, I feel this sense of sort of want to create safety and protection for everyone. But I actually think I'm robbing them of a great joy and victory if I don't allow there to be sort of points of exposure so they understand the power inside themselves. So I don't know, kind of a weird thing.
That's a good, I think you said it on LinkedIn. You said like months from now or years from now, you'll look back and be proud of yourself, right? Of how you handled this and what you got through. And those are those moments that bolster people's courage because you'll be able to look, we'll all have this moment to look back on.
Yeah. And this isn't going to be the last thing life throws at us collectively. I mean, hopefully it doesn't look like a pandemic again, but the muscles that we're developing, the habits, the beliefs, the narrative inside our minds, is setting patterns for how we'll show up and react the next time around. And so we need to not miss that opportunity that we're creating connections in our minds in this way we show up every day today. It will be either in fear and we're cowered away from it, or it will be in courage and strength and say like, hey, look, let the wind hit me first because I know I'm strong and I'm going to be able to withstand that.
I think that's awesome. I was working with some salespeople and they were feeling like 3 months ago when this was first happening, they're like, nobody wants to hear from us, financial advisors too. Like, no one wants to hear from us. We don't want to bother people. And I was like, you're the firefighter. You don't dawdle around. You run into the fire. We need you. And it's not to be like sell things or funny, but at the time, a few months ago, I felt like particularly financial advisors, young ones were creeping back when this was their chance to say, this is how you create stability for yourself. This is how you do it. And for those that took that challenge on, their confidence is going to be so much higher, like you said, because we'll have things again happen. I know one thing that's important to you that you've mentioned before is this idea of having mentors, because you've been a CEO. You've had the same title since you were 25. And certainly you're in a different place now than you were. So it's not just have mentors, but I'm really curious how you learn like who to pick and where to seek advice from. Kind of that deeper level.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So there's two things to that too. Apparently I'm like on the 2 train today.
Yeah.
So the first one is I learned like at the beginning, so I was 24 or 25 when I started running Element 3, and you sort of feel like you need to walk into every room like you know what you're doing. And you start to realize that creates like this plastic wall between you and the rest of the world because you're waiting for other people to be vulnerable so that you can make a connection, but they never are because they're reading the fact that you're not. So the like little mantra in my head was and still is like, be vulnerable first. And then other people will meet you there, but they're not going to take, I'm working on like number lines with my kids right now. You know, they're not going to go further on the number line and socially than you are meeting them. And so be willing to go first. And the one I'm pretty comfortable with being self-deprecating, and I'll be like, oh my word, I did the dumbest thing. Like, what would you do? And then people are more willing to be vulnerable. So I find that creates even more informal mentorship. Is just actually being aware of your own crap and being super comfortable when people ask you like, how are things? Like actually knowing what are the things I'm trying to seek wisdom on right now. And you might get some crap advice and you need to be discerning on that. But I kind of am always like, well, these are the 3 things I'm learning. Over the last 2 years, it was like how to develop mid-level managers. Like we'd never needed them. We didn't know how to do it. Then we'd like put some people in place with some titles in the hopes that they would like figure it out.
Yeah.
And we started realizing that's the most critical part to scaling the organization. So like literally everybody for like a year, they'd be like, what, how are you doing? I'm like, pretty good. Actually, the biggest thing we're trying to figure out right now is XYZ, or we were trying to figure out some cash flow stuff. And so I would say like doing really like top line's really good, kind of trying to figure out how to get our arms around cash flow so that we're going with our own capital and not having to milk the line, our line of credit at the bank so hard. And you start to realize like people know stuff and they'll share it with you.
Totally.
It's about knowing what is the stuff you're working on.
Yes.
And so I usually use the word like, this is the Rubik's Cube I'm trying to solve right now, like this problem.
Yeah.
So the other side is I generally try to find mentors who are bigger, faster, stronger than me.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to say their house is bigger, like I care about the size of my house, but like they have shown that they've known how to create wealth. They've shown that they've been able to create lasting brands. They've shown that they're building teams that I would want to work on.
Yeah.
And those are all part of my personal aim. And so I'm going to follow people who have done that. And a lot of people know how to talk about stuff. And I really look hard at like the pattern of what are the footprints that you've left? Like, is it evidence that you actually know how to grow something, or do you just know how to talk about it really well?
That's so smart. Yeah.
So yeah. And I've given this presentation before called Dear 24-Year-Old Self. And I said, I would go to an event and not spend any time with people in my industry because I knew that they couldn't spend money with me.
Yeah.
And the only way I needed them was to take their employees. And if they were my friends, that was going to be harder. Like, I'm being kind of vulgar about it, but that's actually
It's
how I
true.
felt.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I don't really want them to be my friends. That's not helpful. And you can't even spend money with me anyway. And if you don't solve this, then you would have a 100-person agency, but you don't have one. So you must not know how to do it. And so the answers must not lie in that well. So just like be bold about the thing you
Yes.
want, and then spend your time around people who can help you get there, which oftentimes means being discerning about who you're not going to hang out with.
Isn't that the truth? Addition by subtraction sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
And that's what's hard too. You brought up this really good point about being articulate about what you are looking for and what you're trying to solve, and not coming in like, I've got it together, you're welcome, but really like, here's the piece, here's the nut that we're trying to crack, here's the Rubik's Cube we're trying to solve. And you're actually just, like you said, looking out over the sea of people who are business leaders and seeing who's actually producing, who is actually doing this. Because I sometimes notice that sometimes, and this happens in the coaching world, the best coaches are sometimes quieter, and they're not talking about how they grow their coaching business all the time. They may not be that person. They might be quiet and under the radar, and they're not even like looking to be known for that. They're just doing their thing. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that with leaders all over Indianapolis, that some of the strongest ones who are creating environments that people want to work in, that produce results. Totally. They actually are quiet, and they're not drawing attention to themselves, but you go and find them.
Well, I think that discernment has come with age. I
Sure.
feel like I much more sought the celebrity CEO, if I'm, like,
yeah, totally.
People who I was like, ooh, you're on stage a lot, you must have done something. And then sometimes you get close and you realize you're just actually really good at talking. Like, it's not actually there. The all hat, no cattle thing. So yeah. And you do start to realize sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden in the corners. And I find that's when I export, here's what I need. People will direct you.
Yes.
Sometimes those people who are not as, in the foreground as what you and I are, but have just immense wisdom to share.
Yes.
To learn from.
Yeah, I love that. So then this other piece, I was thinking about you this weekend and Memorial Day, and I was like, oh man, I'm hitting Tiffany right after Memorial Day. I'm like, I wonder what she's doing. She's got kids. She's got a company. Your husband works. So you're like holding all these pieces together this week, and then you're showing up today, making up for yesterday and making it all happen. And I think about, like, the last time I saw you, you were pregnant. I think you still are. You haven't had your kiddo yet. Right. But I was thinking, man, this is a lot. I just am glad I got to our office in one piece. I'm not like also growing humans at the same time and taking care of them. Like, you hold so many things in tension. And we used to call it, like, people would say like work-life balance. I like to call it whole life understanding. Like, there's a wholeness to you, and each piece touches every other piece, and they're all important. I'm curious, how in the world do you navigate that? I'm like getting tired just thinking about it. How in the world do you navigate that on even on a holiday weekend, going back into the work week? How do you keep yourself in a grounded place when you have all these plates spinning?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could probably be a whole episode in itself. But one of the things I've learned, so I think there's like this Colby index thing, and I'm a high quick start. And so I have learned to really lean into that and being comfortable with the messiness that comes with really short switching time. True story, at 3:00, my daughter's had fever for 5 days. The only time the doctor could get her in today was at 3:00. And so I left there at 3:51, and the doctor's office is like 5 minutes from my house. And I sat here and I was like, I'm going to put on earrings and I'm going to put on some lipstick, and we're going to do a thing. That's what we're going to do right now. So
just like, I'm just going to stand up for you right now on the
porch.
No,
I'm not saying that, but I've just learned that
that's
it. I have to be comfortable with the fact that there's just no, I just have to go with it and trust my mind. Yep. And I think that honestly, it comes from, this whole thing is about authenticity. Like, I don't I really actually don't pretend to be anything other than exactly what I am. So I don't have to put anything on.
Yeah.
And I also think that makes the whole game a lot easier to play, in the whole life, work, parenting, all of that. And, they're somewhat symbiotic in the way that they make your mind think, because you are learning similar things in leading a team as you are in parenting children. And to just, I think I had to learn that forward progress is what I had to measure the day on. And there is a degree of messiness and a level of control that you have to be comfortable saying that was maybe a wish, but not an imperative for the day to be able to go the way it needed to. So I think that's one. I think there's parts of it hold loosely. The other is that I really depend on like systems in our house so that I don't have to rethink everything every day or every week. And that makes it so there's just less decisions. That decision fatigue is a real thing. And so there's a lot of things, and that's where I think COVID really sort of was an avalanche for some of us, is like all the systems broke. And so you had to rebuild them a little differently. And so that helps a lot. But, I think it's being authentic about it. Some days are like go really well, and some days it's like, man, that was kind of a hot mess. And but that's okay. But I think the thing you have to be careful of is you don't let it all be a crutch. I could have texted you, Lindsay, and been like, oh my word, my daughter's had fever for 5 days, and turned it into this big dramatic event. 100% she's not going to die. She's going to be fine. And this is going to be fine. We just have to do it. And I think people sometimes create such drama around the individual events that they don't get stuff done.
That's fascinating. I want to hang out on that. Because I definitely see, as a generational consultant and as a coach to, people in different generations, this thing of, it sounds like there's a part of you where there's times when you're like, I'm just going to get this done. We don't need to explore my feelings around it. We don't need to like even stir it up. This is what it is. And I'm going to keep moving. It just seems like that is such a layer of, it takes so much to be that mature, because most people are like kind of on one end of the spectrum, like everything just is what it is, and they're kind of cold, or like, let's explore all your feelings more, warmth, and let's talk about it. So you have found this way to kind of dance in that, care well for people, but then also know like, hey, my brain doesn't need to do any more processing on this.
Yeah, I think that I've learned to be able to contain it. Even if, like, let's say I'm stressed about my daughter, I sort of know enough to know that that's not the 45 minutes that's going to benefit me or her or the situation to sort of experience that.
Yeah.
Maybe after dinner tonight, I can unpack that, but it's not productive or effective. And so I think I have learned to be able to shelf some of that until the right time to unpack it. Because there's demands. I think even you take something, it's a really big deal, but as a leader, you have to learn how to do it. You think about like letting someone go, firing someone, and so you have your own emotional space about that, as you're preparing for it, as you think about the person's time and life on the backside of it. And I think even things like that, and I don't want to say that's routine in a way that sounds callous, but those are like, that moment for you as a leader is not the space and place that's appropriate for you to have your own emotion. You need to be outside. That moment is about that other person.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And so I think that, that's a business example I can think of right now, where it's just not appropriate, and you need to not burden the other person with your own emotions about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. We talk about that as speakers, and I'm sure you think about this as a speaker too. You don't process your emotions with an audience. That's asking too much of them.
Yep.
If you can't speak to something with like needing their encouragement or their kindness, if you need those things, then we're not in a spot where that can be shared. So I can see that too, even, with employees, in all different, even like friendships, there's times where I'm like, is this really just my thing that I need to like process? And not ask for the other person's time and attention to do that. But it's really interesting what you're saying is like, I make a conscious choice of when I can, and it's not about being authentic and not authentic. You still have feelings either way. It's just whether or not this is the place to process them, the place and the time that you have gotten really good at in this whole work-life integration. You've had to.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other thing that's just a natural part of the way I'm wired is that I'm an externalizer. So I can name something without feeling it, which is maybe weird. And so like I can say, I like this conversation, or like, let's say like this is, I'm getting really angry right now. Let's say I'm having a strategic misalignment with somebody on my executive team, and I can say like, your reaction is like really triggering me. I can feel my body reacting, and I don't know exactly why yet, but I definitely can feel I'm reacting. Yeah. And I can say it that way without coming at them or sort of behaving what my body is wanting to do. And I just see that, I think that I naturally do that, but I see that as a real important point of maturity for people, and being able to still create a safe place for someone to walk into conflict with you. Not ignoring your own sort of carnal response to like, this is like pissing me off.
Yeah, like, and
I need to own that right now, and I think it's good for you to know that, but I don't yet have good language for why or what it's connecting to.
That's so good. That's a piece of the professionalism that we talk about in career development, is like not expecting your team to like time out and help you process your emotions, but it doesn't mean you don't get a voice. It just means
totally
all going to be able to help you all the time. Were you going to say something else? Did I interrupt you? We had a little lag there.
No, I think it's a rabbit hole.
Okay. So what about, I'm really curious about this piece, because I know I've seen how much you've done on LinkedIn, how active you've been. You've always been active. But I'm seeing that in my own life too, because we've been in our homes forever. And this idea, now we're talking about all this together right now in real time, but then how does this translate onto social media? How do you kind of balance between the same thing? Like, I'm not asking people for attention, or I'm not asking people to affirm me on social media, but I do have some things to say. And then we have this other piece of like, what actually performs well, and what do people want to read? So we live in this, do you ever feel the tension of this? Like, some things I want to say, some things you probably want to read. And then there's things where I'm like, oh, is this too far? Do you live, like, what are your buckets, or how do you think about that when you're on social media?
Yeah. I find like with so many things, the more I just am pure about it, the more it's just better. And when I start getting all caught up in my head about like what's going to perform and what's not, I just start to turn into this weird commercial that's trying to create billboards nobody wants to read. And so I really do think content so much is a volume game. I do think you have to realize people's attention is short. And so be quick about it.
Yeah.
You know, I dance. The thing in my head is about, you know, I've sort of got this leader, this persona that is me as a leader. There is me and my company as marketers. And then there is this whole like mashup of a 2-career home with kids, and really trying to do that bucket really well. And how much do I want to share across all of those? Is it really just a professional persona? And this part of my life with my kids and my husband, I really want to be private and just mine. That an interesting part about me that people want to know, and I'm sharing it just because I think they want to know it, or do I really feel like it has lessons to teach? So I think that piece I ruminate on some. What is the right balance for me and my family?
Yeah, I can see that.
My middle one would love nothing more than for me to accidentally turn her into a social media star. I love it. My oldest, not so much. So I think about that. You and I have talked a little bit about really, I've intentionally carved away some things from my responsibility to create more time for me to be able to export content through social media.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's a big part about the way leaders can build brands today, and not only for talent attraction, because everyone wants kind of a sense of what am I going to pre-experience before I go into this culture that this leader is building, and how do they make decisions, and how do they communicate, and what expectations going to have. It's sort of an informal like review process for us as leaders.
Yeah.
And then I also think it is it's clearly a way modern brands are going to be built.
Oh yeah.
Everything from Gary Vee to Elon Musk, I don't think in any way, shape or form I'm on the same continent as those people, but it is certainly, there's some celebrity that has to be created around leaders to be able to build, brands that people really respect close and far away. So
yes. Isn't that human? Isn't that human to want to follow someone and not an object?
Sure. Yeah, that's totally right. Totally right.
Like it's really, and we've talked about this strategically too. It's like, that is what humans want. They want to like get their hands on their leader, like understand them, build trust with them. I think post-COVID, when I look at the way that millennials and Gen Zs are talking about their next career steps, they're going to follow people who give back on their bottom line, not just like, oh, we'll give 10 grand to this thing, but we work so that we can also give. I think they're going to look at companies that do that intrinsically, like a place like Patachu with Martha Hoover. She's always thinking about how do I do both at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then this piece of trust too, that I trust Tiffany, so I want to work with her, even though I don't actually work with her every day. There is this idea that I'm following you to wherever you're going because I inherently trust you. I think that's just so deeply human, and social media gives you a chance to share your humanity with other people.
Yeah, you just triggered a topic that I think actually could be a really interesting, I don't know if it's a discussion for the porch or something else, but I think as people, we have tremendous responsibility to give back to our environments around us. Mm-hmm. I sometimes struggle or wonder is element 3 the place where I play out my own cares and interests and things I want to support? Do I do that underneath the element 3 brand, which then is it's making a vote for each of those initiatives for all the people that work for me?
Yeah.
Or is it my responsibility to create an economic engine that creates surplus? And each of those people inside my company and I have access to be able to give both time and money outside of the cone of element 3, because then mm-hmm. it is more aligned maybe to our personal interests. So I would love to like really unpack that with somebody like Martha, who I would say is way on the other end of the spectrum, really sees social enterprise, the other extreme of business is in the business of sort of creating community impact.
Yes.
I'm probably, I wouldn't say all the way to the other side, but the other side of saying, I don't know that element 3 is a place that I need to exercise my own beliefs in places where, but I certainly believe I have a responsibility to create an economic engine and to lead people who understand the importance of giving back to community.
Yeah.
So we don't need to unpack all that today, but I think it'd be really interesting.
I'm writing it down. You're coming back.
to see where it went. And I would probably learn a ton. I'd learn a ton about how she sees it. I know there's others in sort of that B Corp kind of world.
Well, it's interesting too. It'd be interesting to have a porch with a couple people, a couple leaders who are doing it, because there's probably 30 different ways to do it.
Yeah, or like Jeb Banner, he does a lot with giving back.
Totally.
Like, I don't think there's a right way.
No, I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk is on TikTok all day today, raising money for Meals on Wheels. Last time I checked, he was at 500,000. He's probably past that now. But, it's like, he doesn't have anything to do with Meals on Wheels typically, mm-hmm. but he does these things where he's like, I'm going to give you 12 hours of my time, and we're just going to raise money until we could, until we can't anymore. And mm-hmm. there is probably a lot of different ways to do it that would make sense. And it's figuring out, I think you're exactly right. Like you already have that core piece of, it is important that I create on behalf of others who can't, that I make more space, that I give back. And I think in different industries too, it looks different. For sure. It has to,
Totally. Yep.
That's really cool. Do you think, how do you think, what would be your, I don't even know how to ask this question because there's like 10 things I want to ask in it. So how would you encourage people to view social media at 100,000 foot view, your highest view? What do you think social media is for when you put on like your human hat and your marketing hat and like, a lot of psychology? What is the purpose of social media? What can it do for us from a high level?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a really high level, that's a really good question. I bet tonight at like 2 a.m, I'll have a totally different answer.
Text me.
my quick start answer is, I'm really, as marketers, I'm in the media business, and we used to have these conduits like newspapers and magazines and radio to be able to reach any semblance of the public, broad or niche. We had to go through somebody else. And so now we have an opportunity where you can share your message with these platforms. There is no intermediary. You get a chance to do that. And so I think that in some ways it's about, I look at my thought, the things I share is almost it's like I don't have the discipline to blog or write a book probably ever in my life. And so it's a way to kind of catalog what has life taught me and what are my observations about the world I'm living in, and how I feel myself getting more wisdom from the people and things I interact with. I think that's when it's best.
Yeah.
When you see the collective getting more intelligent as a result of sharing. I think where it gets gross and starts to feel like a landfill is when it is very marketing-y and self-serving, and those are the people that you feel you like smell it from a mile away. So that's why I feel it's a like way to touch people's lives and to be able to share your experiences without necessarily having to have had a one-to-one interaction.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. That's a good way to say it.
I don't know. I wonder, I don't know if it's my personality or if it's because I'm, I run a business and have kids and I'm really busy. This idea of people having I feel like really intimate friendships with people that they've never met is not really a thing I've experienced. That would be interesting. Maybe you have, for you to share, but that level of connection, definitely like, oh my word, I got to meet you at a trade show or something like that. But as far as like deep, and maybe it's just because I have relationship overload.
You're back. You're filled up.
Yeah. Until my kids get out of the house, I have relationship overload. But
yeah. Well, it's interesting because I do see that in that same vein, there's different like really niche groups that I follow. And when you get, we love diversity. I think diversity is critical to our expansion of our mind, to everything that's good about humanity. And there's times when you get a group together that has had very similar experiences and like 3 or 4 crosshairs. Like for me, I like to be around people who have had maybe grew up in the church and are consciously like kind of unraveling that, figuring out who they are in the midst of probably something that happened to them and a career change and like family dynamics. When I meet people who are right in that corner with me, you can know each other really well, really fast. You're like, oh my gosh, you get like what you were saying in the very beginning, these foundational experiences. You can find people that are really close to similar like foundational experiences, and that can be deep, quick relationships. And I think that's the piece that can be overlooked because people want to make social media like the engine of evil or like the best thing that's ever happened. And it really is what you do with that. It is what you do with it. And you can find these little niches. When you still bought like real albums, I'd find people that were like obsessed with different artists. And then I'd go find that artist's drummer online because I'm a drummer, and I'd follow those drummers. And it was like, I'm getting a front row seat to the drummers of my favorite artists. This is incredible. And we could have never done that a decade ago or 2 decades ago. So I can see what you're saying though. It's like, And if you're a mom and you run an entire company, you're not like, I would love to have deep friendships around all these different things. So we are limited beings
Mhm.
ultimately.
I think one of the other, like, maybe people know this, but kind of a hack for me is is almost decoding, what do I pay attention to? Like
Yes.
for each individual, like your feed. I was, this is not a plug for Lindsay, but it is a plug for Lindsay. When you were doing those like behind the scenes kind of following you around, like those, I would watch those all the way through. I'm like, that's really interesting that I am watching this all the way through.
Yes.
And so paying attention to your own behavior, I
Hmm.
started to notice people on LinkedIn when they wouldn't bury the hook, but essentially start with the payoff.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to learn. And then you could sort of like click on more in the narrative. I started to observe like, oh, interesting. You didn't make me sit through the play to know how it was going to end. I really appreciate that.
You gave it to me.
So I think, again, each industry is different. Each person has their own communication cadence, but just decode it that way too. Like, why do I keep going back to this? What is so magnetic about it? And then incorporate that into some of your own stuff.
So you can actually use it. It sounds like you're using it too as a self-awareness exercise.
For sure. Yeah. And I think right now, pay attention like a ton. I feel sorry for any E3ers listening in because they're so tired of me saying this. But I was listening to this kind of like little TED Talk style, and this woman was saying, you guys need to understand the future does not suddenly appear. It reveals itself slowly. And right now we all know we're at an inflection point of change. And I think we sort of feel like suddenly Genie in the bottle is going to jump out and we're going to be like, poof, oh my gosh, there it is. But pay attention to your own micro movement. How is it changing? Because those
Hmm.
are indicators about where things are going to go. Um, Everything from, we're looking at primetime television commercials that are almost entirely crowdsourced in their content.
Yeah.
Are we comfortable with that now? That if so, that's really interesting. We need to pay attention. That means there's really no difference in the production value of what is on primetime television and what you can do, with your handheld. And so really paying attention to the parity that's really happening across content overall,
Yeah.
I think creates an even bigger opportunity for social media um, as a category.
Yeah. I think that when we look at even how, and Gary Vee talks about this, Gary Vaynerchuk, but the amount of attention that a TikTok star can get. Charlie, one of the top TikTokers, last time I checked, she had like 50 million followers. So she holds up this little Mr. Sketchy marker to 50 million people. What do you think happens to this little marker? You know,
Totally.
it's attention. It's just wherever your attention goes, that's where the money is. And it's funny because you talk about those behind the scene videos that Kevin and I would do when I would speak. There'd be times when I'd literally be standing backstage. I'd hold my phone up and I'd be like, we're about to go on. What are we going to do? And I would show like the audience and like the random hotel food we're eating.
Uh-huh.
Those would get more attention than like a polished hello and welcome
Uh-huh.
today. And there's this like craving, I think, that my interpretation is there's a craving for this human raw footage that it's actually easier to produce. But to your point, then what is the point of doing $100,000 commercial
Uh-huh.
when you can get that much attention a different way?
Yeah,
That,
I think
that's
it's really
well.
interesting. There's something I haven't totally decoded it yet, but there's something about, like you talked about, about getting a different vantage point that I think
Mm-hmm.
is really interesting. So when we only present the
Mm-hmm.
vantage point that an audience could have otherwise gotten themselves, it's more ignored. Does that make sense? Then like these
Yes.
different vantage points, I
Access.
think literally even camera angle, some of it is behind the scenes, like getting a chance to see J Lo in her robe. You're that, okay, that sounds creepy, but you know what I'm saying.
It's okay. I said girl Fanny, so we're fine.
Like I have a thing for J Lo, but you're like, I know I'm never going to find myself in her dressing room before the Met Gala.
That's the yes.
I like seeing a video that is in an environment that I know I probably never find myself. I think there's something to this like alternate angle, whether it be content or like literally,
Love
that is intriguing and disruptive to us.
I think that's true, that a disruptive piece, you're not expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, like, the other piece of this that we were talking about when we were talking about doing this episode together was authenticity in general. It's not just like take your mask down for the world to see. It's take your mask down and then amplify it on social media and put it out there for people to accept, reject, push back. So what if we went back a step? I know we've just got a few minutes left. So if you have a question, this is definitely the time to put it in the chat box. But Tiffany, what's something that you've done that's helped you take your mask off? Because as soon as I saw you speak, I'm like, she gets it. So I know that you've done work to get there. It didn't just happen to you. What are some things you've done?
Yeah, I think that one was even funny because I had just come off of a pretty big like keynote address, and somebody I respect enough, I came off and he said, "Why do you use slides? It's a crutch for you. Just talk." And I was like, that's just like, that feels like the same as standing naked. He's like, yeah, that's the point. Like you're better. And so I think that presentation, I even said, like, guys, this is my first time I've ever done anything with no slides. I don't know what's going to happen. I might get 4 minutes into this and it's a hot mess. And if so, then that's just where we're going to go together.
Yeah.
And so I do think that when I find I get scared about putting myself out there, like you said, there's probably something I haven't totally worked through in my own sense of identity with that topic, or even in knowing how do I want to be perceived. And I use an example, like this whole being a woman in business is a really hot topic, but not actually something I feel that passionate or do I feel like I have a real meaningful point of view on, because I haven't really experienced a lot of the things that people talk about. I think part of it is I grew up with a really empowering parents that
Sure.
me and my brothers both drove forklifts. We both used power tools. We both used saws. We both laid mulch. Like, it wasn't boy jobs, girl jobs. I think that some of that it just wasn't, I don't see it. And so sometimes I can feel socially pushed into wanting to take that on as a topic, but it really doesn't fit like authentically. But I feel like it doesn't play well for me to say that's not something I'm that passionate about crusading around, because maybe I should. And so I think really sorting through where you land and how you can answer to yourself eloquently and be discerning about, that doesn't mean I don't want women to be successful.
Yeah.
It means does that make sense? So
yes.
I think finding your own, where you settle on some of that, sorting it out is important before you just pick up a microphone that someone else wants you to hold because you think it's a stage you can stand on.
Yeah.
I think that really helps sort out being able to actually be authentic instead of being a puppet for a narrative that you think you need to be saying.
That's really tricky, isn't it? I mean, you have worked through it, and even just talking about it now, it makes sense that there are some shoulds that we have on us that even we've adopted so far that we don't even know that we don't like it. But it takes a ton of courage to say, like, what? Like, my story coach a couple months ago, we were just talking out of the blue. She like pierced me. She's like, you know, what do you actually want to take a stand for? Because you can't stand for everything. And I was like, I want to stand for all good things. That's so much. I won't even know where to start. And it also gives me a chance to skim the surface of a bunch of things and never have to really be authentic either, because we would work through these stories. And as soon as I got shy and felt like, I was like, that's a good story, because I feel totally naked right now. And that's the piece for you to even be able to say, like, yeah, I happen to be a woman that owns a business, but this topic doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't make me alive. So I can't spend my time like campaigning for it. What's something, and I'm totally putting you on the spot, we did not talk about this. What's one thing, and it could be, I don't care if it's left field, homemade baby food. I don't care what it is. What's one thing that you're like, I do stand on this one thing. This really does matter to me. It gets my juices going.
That's a really good question.
It's a really hard one too. I'm so sorry to end.
No, it's really good. something that I would like die on?
Like something that you're like, I really, really feel this. People need to know this, or I want people to understand this. I could
Yeah,
guess some of yours just from
the thing
watching.
that comes to my mind is I don't know how this is a platform, but my dad, I think sometimes you start to realize time is a weird thing. So I'll tell you the thing. It says truth tells its own story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and time is a weird thing. Like we want justice in sort of these neat blocks of things. I was wronged, make it right. And I want to see the beginning
Yeah.
of something in really crisp ways. And my dad says truth tells its own story, just not always on your timeline. And I think this idea of that doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight for social justice or for things, but you just have to learn that the truth, character, those things reveal themselves. And you don't always look the wise hero you want to when you're the one who's sort of forcing it to happen before circumstances would have it such. And I think that's taught me a lot of patience. I think that it's even in watching talent I've developed over time, you start to see their truths reveal themselves. They might be, might have not the skills to do their job, but you see their character revealed. You see the decision. You see what they do with their time when you're not looking. You start to say, there's something there. You're worth me building. I think that really drives my energy in the people I surround myself closely with. I watch their character moves, whether they be element 3 time or non-element 3 time.
Yeah.
And I think it works a lot when the people we work for too, we watch their behavior and how they show up in the sales process. If you're 10 minutes late to every meeting in the sales process, you're going to be 10 minutes late to every meeting, when we work together. And all those are character cues. And I think that has made me more intellectually patient than I'm more naturally wired to be.
Mm-hmm. To watch, like, don't listen to what somebody says, watch what they do type.
Yeah. How do you
I think
spend your
it's so,
time? How do you spend your money? Yeah.
well, Tiffany, what an interesting, I just got to say it's poetic that you run a marketing company and you're saying like, watch somebody's behavior, not what they say. That's like such a deep waters, not what you would expect to hear, Don't you
Yeah,
think it's kind of wild? I mean, in the best way, like you can't be something you're not. This is part of authenticity. This is how you build real muscles in the real world.
I think the best brands, I think, in the cone of marketing, what I spent a career learning how to do is brand. And the best brands are really anchored in, I think, the values of the leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we express that to the marketplace is where marketing comes in, is how do I take the things that are innate or life has taught you and turn those into something that's amplified, that others can come alongside, you can start to create messaging around, and it can become a repeated pattern. But that's really at its best what it is. It does get polluted, into a lot of crap. But at its best, that's what it is. And I really think this is a new day for marketing in a world of social currency, in a world of authenticity, in a world where there is fewer, there's literally more plexiglass, but less sort of layers between consumers and brands. I really think it's what it has to look like today for it to be lasting and sustainable, and all that. So
That's, I need to like encapsulate that. That shifts my perspective. I think it shifts everybody's perspective too with this real inside out approach. If you're if you're like a one person business, or you have 100 employees, or you have 10,000 employees, this idea of what you stand for, who you already are, we're amplifying that.
mm-hmm.
We're not creating something that you can tell people you are, which is so powerful. And that's why we're talking about social media, because it amplifies whatever what did you say earlier today? I took a note and you had this really good comment. You said social media is a call to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was being like we are already called in different ways to do that, but now more than ever, it's a call to be your true self.
Yeah, and I think what I want to say is like, we can't just pick this bag of social media and say this is how I'm going to show up. It really is a reflection of already how you're showing up in the world. It's just a static. It's something that's captured, and I think the rest of our conversations and all of that is more fluid, and you have these essentially snapshots.
Yes.
Of your life, your day, your thoughts, your beliefs. And the more you exercise that, the more you sort out, what do I really think and believe? And you use Gary Vee as an example, and he really has a few narratives that he treads back over and over and over. And it's about not letting social norms direct you, not letting other people's expectations discern, live frugally and be smart, like play the long ball on everything. Like there's sort of these repeated patterns. And that's what you see him practicing in everything that he does.
Yes.
And so it's super congruent. He doesn't have to think, what is the book I'm going to read? And then how do I then go to market? It's all one breath to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's an example of someone living in just intense alignment.
Yeah.
With what life has taught them, how they share their experiences, and what he teaches others. And, he has a massively abundant perspective on the world and life and resources and money and all of that.
Yeah.
And again, I think he's sped up in his process of exporting that. But anyways, we'll leave it at that. It's 4:57.
I need to let you go take care of your kids. See, this is what happens on the porch.
Well, I feel bad for the poor people listening. They're like, I have to pee. It's 3 minutes till.
No, this is awesome, Tiffany. I love listening to what you have to share. And as somebody who really does live from the inside out, I watch you do that. And even your teammates, Karen was saying, you're known for having grace, that you always have grace, that you teach this to other people without even knowing it. I see that in you as a speaker and as a leader. So it means a lot that amidst everything else that you have going on, that you came to the porch to share with us your message today. And let's all stay connected. Stay connected to Tiffany. You can follow her on LinkedIn. Sam, will you put up her information for LinkedIn? She posts great information that will make you stop and think. If you took like a philosopher / CEO and you just need somebody you went, I have to rethink that. Follow Tiffany. You're going to find yourself pausing more than you did before and considering what she has to say. Tiffany, on our team debriefs, Samantha and I will go back through things that you've said on webinars. And we're like, what do you really think about that? Let's really stop and pause and think. So thank you for being a voice for all of us and to help us think differently, and for your time. Hope your family recovers quickly and well, and that you can just keep making it happen this spring. Thanks for being a part of this today.
Yeah, thanks. It was a real pleasure. Thanks everyone for listening, and go crush your week.
Go crush your week. Go connect to Tiffany on LinkedIn. We will send you a recording of this tomorrow. Goodbye, friends. Thanks for spending some time with us on the porch. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.